Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are strapping on our mental hiking boots and preparing to plunge into one of the most famous and certainly most misunderstood landscapes on Earth.
We're talking about no Aokigahara Jukai.
The sea of trees. I mean, even the name itself is powerful.
It is, and it's a location whose name has traveled globally, but it's often burdened by these really powerful, sensationalized, and frankly, dark labels.
Right.
But our deep dive today is, well, it's built upon a stack of source material that really aims to reclaim the ground truth. We're pulling from official geological reports, detailed environmental studies on its unique ecology.
And local tourism guides, which is important.
Very important. And also some serious journalistic investigations into that dark reputation that has, completely overshadowed its natural history.
That's right. Our mission today is to explicitly cut through the global sensationalism, the Hollywood tropes, and all the internet folklore.
Yeah.
We want to synthesize these sources to understand the true, multifaceted nature of the Jukai. Because you have to remember, this forest is simultaneously a national natural monument for its unique formation.
And it's also an essential asset within the Fuji Mountain domain, which is a recognized World Cultural Heritage Site.
That dual identity, a natural wonder on one hand and a symbol of global tragedy on the other, that's really central to this conversation, isn't it?
It is. We're going beyond the myths, beyond the media frenzy, to reveal the core reality of the Jukai, a surprisingly young, vibrant, and incredibly resilient ecosystem.
An ecosystem defined entirely by fire and lava.
Exactly. Fire, basaltic lava, and this persistent, almost aggressive power of life that just refuses to be extinguished. For you, the listener, this is a shortcut to understanding one of the world's most complex places, separating the science from the sensation.
Okay, let's unpack this geological foundation first, because everything about the Jukai, the atmosphere, the difficulty of hiking, even the myths we're going to get into, it all flows directly from how this landscape was created.
It really does.
When we think of a deep, ancient forest, we usually picture millennia of rich soil, right? But the Jukai is actually, geologically, a newborn. It's a primary forest formed only about 1,200 years ago.
And it's so important to stress how young that is in ecological time. It's just a blink of an eye. And its birth was truly spectacular and violently transformative.
The sources really emphasize the power of that initial event.
The entire 3,000-hectare area is defined by this one colossal event. The Jukai, the Jogan eruption. It started in 864 CE and lasted for several months.
And this wasn't like a classic volcanic explosion, was it? The kind you see in movies.
Not at all. Mount Fuji didn't explode in that sense. Instead, it just spewed these vast, slow-moving rivers of basaltic lava, what we now call the Aokigahara lava all, onto its northwest slope.
So it's more of a massive, unstoppable flow.
A flow that literally rewrote the map. That massive river of lava violently split what was once a singular, ancient, expansive lake called Sei no Umi.
Huh.
The flow basically acted like a giant dam. It partitioned the water body, dividing it into the two distinct modern lakes we know today, Saiko, or West Lake, and Shujiko, or Shoji Lake.
And there's still evidence of their shared origin, right? That's what I found fascinating.
That's the amazing part. Those two lakes, even today, maintain the exact same elevation. And for scientists, that's a clear indication that despite being separated on the surface, they're still connected.
Underground.
Underground, yeah. Through the highly fractured, porous basalt rock that acts like this gigantic sponge beneath the entire Jukai.
So the foundation isn't soil. It's a massive, hard, dark, and highly fractured sponge of the salt lava. And that structure creates the very specific conditions for the forest that grew on top of it. Life on lava.
It creates a challenging, even hostile environment, but one that life has adapted to in this masterful way. This huge lava field is covered by an incredibly thin layer of soil.
How thin are we talking?
We aren't talking meters. In many places, the soil layer is only about 10 to 15 centimeters thick.
That's it. That's barely anything.
It's nothing. And that presents an immediate existential problem for any tree trying to grow and anchor itself against the high winds that come down from the Fuji foothills.
Which has to mean the roots can't penetrate down for stability. And that explains the really distinct visual appearance of the forest floor, doesn't it?
Precisely. The roots cannot possibly penetrate that incredibly hard underlying basalt lava, so they have nowhere to go but out and over.
They spread horizontally.
They spread horizontally across the surface, weaving themselves through tiny crevices, grasping onto moss and surface debris for any kind of purchase they can get.
And this has a name, this phenomenon.
It does. This unique visual is called niagari, or raised roots. They look like massive, thick, writhing snakes, or maybe the exposed veins of the forest. They just cover the ground.
And that gives the Jukai its distinctive, almost otherworldly look. It's the visible evidence of life just fighting against this immense physical constraint.
It is. It's life being tenacious.
That explains why the term sea of trees feels so incredibly accurate. They almost look like they're floating or just anchored to the surface of this hard, dark lava ocean.
Exactly.
But how does a forest this dense survive with so little soil and so few resources? It sounds like a constant battle for moisture.
It's a phenomenal survival partnership. The microecology here is all about symbiosis.
Yeah.
You have coniferous trees like hemlock and cypress coexisting with broadleaf trees, and they create this dense canopy.
Okay.
But the real genius is on the forest floor, where you have these thick, lush layers of moss and ferns that just flourish.
And the trees help the moss, and the moss helps the trees.
It's a perfect loop. The trees provide the essential year-round shade that the moss needs to grow and, crucially, to retain moisture. The moss, in turn, acts like a gigantic slow-release natural sponge, gathering and storing water from rain and fog.
And then the shallow roots of the trees.
The nigari roots, yeah. They draw that life-sustaining moisture directly from the moss. It's a closed, mutually sustaining system that allows the entire ecosystem to thrive on resources that would just starve a traditional forest.
So if the roots can only spread horizontally and anchor to that thin surface layer, that harsh environment also explains another common feature that really contributes to the forest's atmosphere.
The fallen trees.
The constant presence of fallen trees, or tuboku.
Absolutely. Because of the poor anchorage, that purely horizontal root structure, even large, mature trees often can't support their own weight.
Against the winds from Mount Fuji.
Against the powerful, often sudden high winds, or even just against their own size, they fall easily. So you see these enormous decomposing trees everywhere, crisscrossing the path and the forest floor.
And this is where it gets really interesting, connecting back to that idea of resilience. What role do those fallen giants play in this young forest?
They are critical. Those fallen trees don't just rot and disappear. They become the essential next generation of nutrients.
Yeah.
Because the original soil layer is so thin, the decaying wood is the primary source of organic material.
The fallen trees literally become the new soil.
They become the soil, allowing mosses, ferns, and eventually new saplings to take hold right there on the decomposing trunk. It's a continuous, visible cycle of collapse feeding future growth. It demonstrates a constant, fierce life force.
You know, despite the popular image of the Jukai as silent, empty, or even dead-fueled by the darker myths we'll get to, the sources all highlight that there is a ton of indigenous life present, which is quite the contrast.
A great deal of life. It's a healthy, if constrained, ecosystem. Large mammals like deer, foxes, mice, moles, and wild boar are all noted residents.
I read that the deer can be a bit aggressive.
The males especially, yeah. You also have a significant and diverse bird population. You'll hear the vibrant Japanese white-eye and the very distinctive bush warbler, whose calls often break that otherwise hushed quiet of the dense canopy.
And we should probably debunk a persistent local rumor while we're at it.
The wild dog packs, yes. Expert reports confirm that wild dog packs do not inhabit the forest. The ecosystem simply lacks the caloric resources and the prey density necessary to sustain large, permanent packs of canines.
Okay, so moving from the complex surface life downward, the specific mechanics of those lava flows also created these natural wonders beneath the canopy. I'm talking about the numerous lava tube caves, which have a fascinating history.
Indeed. The Jukai is riddled with geological features. The Fugaku Wind Cave, or Fugaku Fuketsu, for instance, is one of the most substantial and frequently visited.
It's huge, right?
It's a massive natural horizontal tunnel. It stretches 201 meters long and is nearly 9 meters high. It's even been recognized nationally as a natural monument, which underscores its geological significance.
And these caves, they all share a unique climate that made them intensely practical for centuries, didn't they?
Absolutely crucial for the local economy. The sheer thickness of the overlying basalt and the constant internal air currents mean that the average temperature inside these caves, even during the oppressive humidity of a Japanese summer, hovers around a remarkable 3 degrees Celsius.
Natural cold storage.
It was a priceless capability.
Right.
So how is this natural refrigeration actually utilized by the local communities before, modern cooling technology?
They've used it for agriculture, primarily.
Right. Until well into the 1950s, these caves were the main natural refrigerators for the area. They were critical for storing silkworm eggs during the off-season to ensure controlled hatching, which was vital for the sericulture industry.
And for seeds, too.
They were also used to store various tree seeds to preserve them for future planting. Visitors today can take a 15-minute course inside to see those massive ice columns, which can persist year-round, and observe the distinct lava formations like rope lava and lava shelves.
Which tell you about the original flow.
They illustrate the speed and texture of the original 864 CE flow. It's a powerful connection between that raw geological event and human economic history.
And we should also touch upon the sites connected to the deep spiritual history of Mount Fuji itself, like the Ryugu Cave, Ryugu Duketsu.
That's a lesser-known lava tube, often overlooked by general tourists, but it holds immense spiritual significance. It's recognized as a profound power spot and was an integral holy site tied to the historical Fuji pilgrimage group, the Fujiko.
This was a group from the Edo period.
Yeah, they were very popular then, and they saw the entire mountain domain as sacred. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you see that the spiritual reverence for these natural dark formations existed right alongside the modern reputation for tragedy. For centuries, this was a sacred space, not a cursed one.
Right. And finally, for anyone actually visiting this area, not for the spiritual history, but purely for the natural beauty, the sources point to a fantastic scenic viewpoint that truly captures the scale of this unique ecosystem.
You should definitely seek out Koigai, that's Kushe. This viewing spot is easily accessible on the eastern side of the Jukai.
And the view is spectacular, I hear.
It offers a stunning panoramic view of the entire sea of trees, allowing you to visually grasp the sheer scale and density of the Jukai, this enormous, resilient, mossy blanket of green at the majestic foot of Fuji. It's an essential antidote to the image of the dark, isolated forest.
Okay, so we've established the robust scientific and historical reality of the Jukai, but now we have to tackle the myths, the legends that have, frankly, defined this location for the outside world. And the most famous one, the one everyone references, is the compass conundrum.
The myth is undeniably potent, and it provides the seemingly scientific explanation for the area's danger.
The idea is that the forest's high iron content in the basaltic lava causes compasses to just spin wildly or fail entirely,
thereby ensuring anyone who strays from the established path is hopelessly lost, victims of the ground's own magnetism. It sounds terrifyingly plausible, especially when you consider that dark, homogeneous environment we just discussed.
So what's the definitive scientific reality check on this claim?
The reality is that the rumor is definitively false for navigation purposes. While the basaltic lava does contain magnetites, which are indeed magnetic iron, and that iron can exert a magnetic pull, this effect is highly localized and minor.
So it's not entirely made up, but it's exaggerated.
Massively exaggerated. As a test, if you place an analog compass directly on the rock, the needle might indeed twitch or deflect by a few degrees, maybe 3 or 4 degrees.
But that's a control test, not actual navigation. Once you lift it off the rock and use it as intended?
Once you hold a compass at chest height, which is the proper way to navigate while hiking, the Earth's natural massive magnetic field completely dominates the minuscule, localized pull of the rock beneath your feet.
So it works normally?
The compass functions normally. It points north reliably. And in fact, to truly settle this debate, the Japanese self-defense forces regularly conduct standard-issue map and compass exercises within the Jukai. They use analog compasses, and they work.
So the mechanism of the legend, the magnetic failure, is definitively debunked, and yet the feeling of disorientation that people report is profoundly real.
It is.
If the magnetic field isn't the problem, why do people genuinely get lost, sometimes only a short distance from the road?
It's a matter of environmental psychology, and it's very powerful. The Jukai is intensely dense. The canopy is so thick that light struggles to penetrate, and the scenery is incredibly homogeneous.
Right, there are no landmarks.
Because of that young, flat lava field, there are almost no discernible geological landmarks, no distant peaks visible, no unique rock formations, and no streams, since the water flows through the porous lava underground.
So you step off the path and you're immediately lost.
When you step off the established paths, that visual uniformity, combined with the pre-existing psychological bias that the Jukai is where you get lost, causes human spatial and directional sensing to fail, and fail quickly. People often panic after straying only 10 or 15 meters off the main trail.
And they're convinced they've walked miles into the deep, dark interior.
Exactly. This is probably amplified by the lack of sun direction due to the dense canopy, which makes figuring out the time of day or your location relative to the sun nearly impossible to determine. You lose that critical celestial cue.
So even though the magnetic myth is false, the fear of getting lost is justified if you ignore the designated trails.
Absolutely. And here's a great practical nugget from the sources for anyone who finds themselves near the area. A survival tip rooted in historical knowledge.
Share it.
If you happen to be off the path and disoriented, the advice is not to try and backtrack immediately, but to keep walking and searching for any path.
Why is that?
Because the area has been historically used for centuries, for pilgrimage, logging, agriculture, the Jukai is actually crisscrossed with a dense network of old, abandoned utility routes, historical trails, and even routes built for search operations.
So you're bound to run into something.
Persistence in finding one of these can eventually lead you out to a main road or a tourist area. The sources also advise relying on analog compasses over electronic devices,
Not because of the magnetism, but for a much simpler reason.
simply because mechanical compasses don't fail due to dead batteries or dropping them onto the hard lava rock.
Okay, let's pivot to perhaps the strangest thriller that gained massive traction in the digital age. The Jukai Village myth, or, Jukai Mura. This was a pervasive internet sensation.
This legend truly captured the modern imagination. It gained massive popularity in the mid-2000s, boosted by internet forums and later by horror films like Jukai Mura.
And what's the story?
It posits that deep within the supposedly inaccessible forest, there exists a secret, hidden, self-sustaining village.
A village of outcasts.
Supposedly populated by people who came to commit suicide but changed their minds, or those who just couldn't return to mainstream Japanese society. It's a really compelling idea.
And crucially, this rumor was heavily supported by photographic evidence that seemed irrefutable, wasn't it? Satellite photos appeared to confirm this strikingly artificial, grid-like, rectangular settlement surrounded by deep, dense forest.
Seemingly unconnected to any roads.
Yeah.
That satellite imagery, particularly after Google Maps became widely available in 2005, was the single most powerful fuel for the myth. It looked too ordered to be natural and too isolated to be official.
So what's the real story?
The true identity of the Jukai village has been definitively confirmed as the Shoji Minchuku village. Kaifno. It's a legitimate, known, and registered town that operates as a lodging community.
It is absolutely not a secret, self-sustaining community of the desperate.
Not at all.
But then why does it look so strikingly artificial, like a military grid in satellite views? That's what gave the myth its power.
And this is where the profound, tragic, real history of the region emerges. It's a story of collective trauma and recovery.
Okay.
The artificial, intentionally organized geometric layout of Shoji Minchuku village is a direct result of a devastating natural disaster that occurred far too close to the Jukai.
Can you walk us through that specific historical event?
Certainly. The original nearby village, Nemba, which was located near Saiko, was an established historic community. But in 1966, Typhoon 26 caused a massive catastrophic mudslide and landslide.
The Ashiwara disaster.
Known locally as the Ashiwara disaster, yeah. And it almost entirely destroyed the village. It was a staggering tragedy, with 94 fatalities reported.
94 lives lost in one landslide. That's an immense toll on a small, local community.
It fundamentally upended their lives. The surviving residents, having lost everything, were granted new land by the government in 1967. They collectively relocated to this new area, which became this Shoji Minchuku village.
And they laid it out that way on purpose.
They intentionally laid out the area in that geometric, organized fashion to facilitate the rapid rebuilding of their lodging industry, which was booming regionally at the time, catering to the growing tourism around Mount Fuji.
So the aerial picture that terrified everyone on the internet, the picture that launched 1,000 urban legends of deep, dark secrecy,
Was actually a picture of collective, highly organized recovery from an immense, sudden natural tragedy. It's a powerful reversal of perception.
It truly is. The area later saw a decline in the lodging boom, which, combined with its new artificial look, led to it being forgotten by metropolitan tourists.
So when newer generations encountered the satellite images of this organized yet quiet and seemingly remote place,
They mistook administrative planning, driven by necessity and disaster recovery, for deep conspiratorial secrecy.
precisely. And the sources point out that there was a genuine hidden village nearby, which further confused the narrative and perhaps gave the legend some accidental grounding.
The original Nemba settlement?
Yes. By all historical accounts, it was a genuine kakurazato, a hidden village or an isolated enclave. It focused on traditional practices like sericulture and grazing and remained relatively isolated until the 1966 disaster. Today, the Saikoyashi no Sado Nemba is a beautifully reconstructed tourist site built on the land that was once this genuinely isolated traditional community.
And the modern urban legend just conflates the tragic reality of the disaster and the relocation with the historical isolation of the old village.
Exactly.
Okay, moving on. The Jukai also has whispers of hidden, suspicious, new religious cults operating in its depths. Like the village myth, this has a basis in real history, but it's wildly distorted.
This is a complex myth. It draws on ancient spiritual practice and modern, terrifying criminal history. The idea of secrecy and strange activity has much older roots, tied to the powerful historical spiritual connection to Mount Fuji, or Sacred Peak Fuji.
So the area is genuinely dotted with legitimate ancient religious sites.
Yes, related to Sengen Shrine and the Fujiko pilgrimage group from the Edo period. These are historical established sites.
But the contemporary fear of a suspicious cult is a much more recent phenomenon, tied to a very specific, dark chapter in Japanese history, isn't it?
It is almost entirely due to the influence of On Shinrikyo.
Later renamed Aleph and Hikari no Wa.
Right. The facilities for Aum were historically located right near the Jukai's boundary in what was then Kamikushiki Village. And crucially, this was where the cult was discovered to have been manufacturing large quantities of illegal narcotics, and more infamously, the nerve agent sarin.
The knowledge that facilities capable of manufacturing a chemical weapon were operating right next to the forest must have profoundly altered public perception of the entire region.
It fueled massive public suspicion. The proximity created an enduring association. If alum could hide operations there, including industrial-scale manufacturing of highly dangerous materials, then the assumption became
that other strange groups must also be using the deep forest as an impenetrable cover for their activities.
It's guilt by association based purely on geography and a massive historical trauma.
And it's not just Ayum, though. The sources mention specific, real, dilapidated structures deep in the Jukai that contribute to this atmosphere of secrecy.
That's where reality lends credence to the myth. There is the specific example of the dilapidated religious facility called Kentoku Dojo, located deep within the Jukai. Journalists and researchers have located it, noting that its sheer isolation and state of disrepair contribute to the sense of mystery.
And the story behind it is pretty interesting.
One source notes that it reportedly started post-WBYI by a failed Tokutai pilot who found a pre-existing Fujiko site and eventually formally rented the land, operating in extreme isolation. These real isolated structures, even if they are benign spiritual retreats, are easily woven into the narrative of hidden, dangerous communities.
Before we move on to the darker reputation, we have to mention a couple of other minor but persistent mysteries that the sources touched on, just to round out the exploration narrative. The first is the legend of the subterranean passage.
The Great Tunnel Rumor. The famous one is the legend that a subterranean passage runs all the way from the Narasawa Ice Cave's Jigoku-ana, the hellhole, to the far-off Inoshima Island in Kanagawa Prefecture.
Which is a huge distance.
Immense. The sources note this is a widely believed urban legend, and there's sometimes even signage referencing it as local folklore, but it remains physically unverified. It's a great piece of local color, however.
And then there's the genuinely perplexing mystery of the stone walls.
The stone walls, or ishirui, are very real. They are a confirmed historical anomaly. It's a roughly 2-kilometer-long, low wall built simply of stacked lava, running through the forest and observable from the Tokai Nature Trail.
And no one knows why it's there.
Its exact purpose remains one of the Jukai's most enduring, genuine mysteries. Was it a wartime fortification built by the famous warlord Takeda Shingen? Or maybe an ancient hunting blind?
Or something more pragmatic, like pest control.
Possibly an Edo period effort for pest control, preventing deer or boar from entering settled agricultural areas. No one knows definitively, and it adds to that genuine sense of historical and natural intrigue that the Jukai offers, completely separate from its tragic image.
Okay, so we've established that the Jukai is geologically unique, ecologically resilient, and full of historical and natural intrigue. Yet globally, it is almost universally known for one thing, and one thing only. We need to dissect how this dark reputation, this stigma of being the suicide forest, began, because the forest was not always known this way.
The turning point is incredibly specific, and it is a powerful example of how fiction can dictate global reality. The negative association began in 1959.
With the publication of one novel.
The novel Nami no Tu, or Wave Tower, by the celebrated and influential author Nunun Sage Matsumoto.
So a single fictional act published in one novel was enough to profoundly and permanently shift the identity of a massive geographical location. That's astonishing cultural power.
It truly is. In Nami no 2, the heroine commits suicide in the Jukai. And it frames it not just as a location, but as the place where one could disappear entirely, providing the final necessary setting for her despair. Matsumoto was one of the most famous novelists in Japan at the time, and his work was an immediate cultural phenomenon.
And that initial fictional spark was then amplified exponentially by the media apparatus.
Precisely. The subsequent television dramas based on the novel and the intense, sensationalized wide show coverage that followed took that fictional narrative and cemented it as reality in the public consciousness. The media was key to institutionalizing the Jukai's image. Police searches were covered with this breathless sensationalism.
I recall the sources describing the visual language the media used during these searches.
They sensationalized the tragedy. Wide show coverage often featured dramatic aerial shots of the dense green canopy, accompanied by captions designed to shock, like Aokigahara Jukai Big Search, constantly reinforcing the Jukai's image as the last destination.
A place explicitly sought out for finality.
And this cycle of sensational media coverage fueled the tragic reality by making the location famous for that purpose.
And tragically, that media and literary influence was reinforced by secondary works that were often found at the site.
Yes, the influence of works like The Complete Suicide Manual by Kensai Seihaku cannot be overlooked. The sources note that copies or torn pages from this manual were sometimes found with deceased persons discovered within the forest,
which further institutionalized the Jukai as a known, almost recommended site for ending one's life.
It created a powerful cognitive feedback loop. People went there because they believed it was the established, culturally recognized place to go.
This is where the administrative data becomes absolutely critical to understanding the depth of the problem. The forest's grim reputation is driven almost entirely by people coming from outside the region.
It's an administrative challenge unlike any other.
The statistical reality is stark and provides the clearest evidence that this is a destination phenomenon, not a localized one.
If you look at the 2019 data provided by the local authorities, the suicide deaths based on residency for the two local towns stood at a low 3 people.
3? Okay.
However, the number of deaths discovered in the Jukai, most of whom were not local residents, was 37 in that same year.
That enormous discrepancy, more than tenfold, shows that the Jukai functions primarily as a highly publicized destination for individuals traveling from outside the region who are seeking to end their lives. It's an issue of reputation and attraction.
Exactly. And as the global digital age took hold in the 21st century, that dark reputation just exploded internationally, often stripped of any nuanced Japanese cultural context.
Western media firmly solidified the suicide forest image. Hollywood films, like The Sea of Trees and The Forest, often relied on portraying it as a haunted, sinister, and often supernatural place filled with vengeful spirits.
And this cinematic treatment explicitly attracted a type of dark tourism interested solely in the macabre and the exploitation of human suffering.
The tension created by this dark tourism came to a head in late 2017 with one of the biggest ethical controversies in internet history.
Centered around a hugely popular vlogger.
The Logan Paul incident. This was a true watershed moment that forced a global reckoning on content ethics in sensitive locations.
It was unavoidable global news. Paul and his entourage visited the Jukai, explicitly seeking out the morbid. After discovering a body, they filmed it, included the footage in a YouTube vlog, and provided inappropriate, insensitive commentary.
And the sheer scale of his audience, over 15 million subscribers, meant this act immediately reached a massive, often young, global audience.
The public reaction was swift and furiously negative, forcing tech giants to police their platforms in unprecedented ways.
YouTube was under intense public and corporate pressure to respond.
And they took significant action against one of their biggest stars. Paul's channel was removed from YouTube's premium advertisement lineup, Google Preferred, which was a massive financial hit. His other planned projects were immediately placed on hold.
And the company publicly stated they were reviewing his conduct.
The incident forced a necessary global debate. Where is the ethical line when monetizing sensitive, tragic locations for content creation? It was the moment that Jukai's tragedy became an unmonetizable, ethical liability for big tech.
It's interesting to note how external tourist perception has adapted to this dual identity we've discussed, the natural wonder versus the tragedy.
Tourists who visit today, often drawn by the fame but intending to hike the nature trails, frequently describe the Jukai as possessing this unique, conflicting charm. Reviews often call it beautiful, but also terrifying.
Explicitly linking its natural, mystical beauty and fierce vitality with its tragic history of death. They're drawn to this strange, powerful juxtaposition.
They are.
Given this persistent and internationally amplified stigma, the local administration in the Fuji foothills faces an immense, continuous challenge that requires daily, on-the-ground intervention.
The administrative challenge is immense. They have to combat the continuous flow of visitors attempting suicide, many of whom are strangers from distant cities or foreign countries.
And the solution they developed is the Furai Voice Calling Project.
A daily, intensive, and incredibly compassionate intervention program. Furai means connection or contact, and that's precisely its mission.
Can you describe the scale and the commitment of this project? Because it sounds like a profound civic commitment.
It is a massive resource drain, which reflects the gravity of the situation. The project is funded by the local governments, often using national grants, and had a budget exceeding 20 million JPY in 2020.
And the intervention isn't sporadic.
Not at all. Dedicated staff patrol the accessible perimeter and known entry points daily, 365 days a year. They generally operate in 2 teams of 2 people, working from roughly 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
And their mission is to identify, approach, and engage with individuals who fit a certain profile or display behavior consistent with distress.
Exactly.
So what are the measurable results of this constant water's edge protection? Does this compassionate intervention actually work?
It works extraordinarily well. The data is compelling.
Yeah.
Between 2012 and 2019, staff contacted an astounding 2,359 people whom they suspected were intending to end their lives.
Wow.
And crucially, they were able to successfully intervene for, protect, and safely refer 525 people during that period.
525 people.
In the year 2020 alone, they contacted 346 individuals, protecting 48 of them. It is a stunning testament to the power of intentional human connection, serving as a direct countermeasure to despair.
We should also touch on the philosophical debate surrounding the signage posted at the entry points of the Jukai. This is a classic example of a good intention creating an unintended dilemma.
This is the signage that explicitly warns in large characters, "Think of your family. Life is a precious gift from your parents." The dilemma is nuanced.
While the signs are explicitly intended to deter and prevent suicide,
Critics argue that by pointing out the area's specific tragic history and role, the signs inadvertently reinforce the area's reputation. For someone specifically seeking the Jukai as their final destination, the sign can, paradoxically, function as an unwelcome call or confirmation.
confirming they have reached the right, or rather, the wrong place. It reinforces the very stigma they are trying to combat.
Exactly.
Okay, we've completed our journey. We started by establishing the Jukai's geological and ecological reality. We waded through its fictional dark side, and we've examined the very real human efforts to counter the tragedy.
Right.
Now we return to the forest itself and its potential for a new, positive narrative centered on vitality and exploration.
And the central contrast has to be the lasting takeaway. Despite the overwhelming, internationally amplified dark reputation, the Jukai is fundamentally a place of profound, almost shocking life force.
It's a natural monument.
A unique primary forest that offers a genuinely mystical and non-ordinary atmosphere, born directly from volcanic devastation and defined by resilience.
For those intrigued by the geological or ecological reality, the life that anchors itself to lava, the sources make it clear that the Jukai is accessible and safe, provided you operate with extreme respect and stick to the rules.
Absolutely. There are safe, well-marked tourist trails, or yuhodu, available and maintained. These paths allow visitors to safely enjoy the forest's specific, hushed beauty and experience what locals call its life power, or oyemin.
And the sources strongly recommend joining a guided tour.
Not just for safety, but because the local guides are instrumental in providing the true context and shifting that initial negative perception that many visitors arrive with.
If someone visits, the ecotourism rules are strict, and understandably so, given the fragility of this young environment where the soil is only 10 centimeters deep.
The preservation rules are critical to sustaining this delicate balance. First and foremost, no off-trail entry. It's strictly prohibited. This is mandatory, not optional, both for environmental protection and because of the physical danger from hidden lava holes, deep crevices, and unstable ground covered deceptively by leaves and moss.
And what about the concept of sampling or collecting souvenirs?
That is strictly forbidden and actively monitored. Visitors must not take plants, moss, rocks, or anything else from the forest floor. In this resource-scarce environment, All are vital nutrients and are part of that essential cyclical nutrient chain for the young, thin-soiled forest.
And obviously, no graffiti, avoid loud noises, respect the wildlife.
The standard rules. There's also a fascinating safety tip about clothing that goes beyond standard hiking advice related to the resident wildlife.
Oh, hornets.
Yes, this is important. When entering the forest, the usual advice applies. Wear walking shoes, comfortable clothes, a hat. Carry bags as a backpack to keep your hands free in case of falls on the uneven lava surface.
But specifically, they advise visitors to avoid dark clothing and strong scents like perfume or heavily scented hair products.
This is because they can attract the large, often aggressive local hornets, the suzumebachi, which highlights the fact that the Jukai's dangers are natural, not supernatural.
What stands out to me is how effectively the local guides seem to change the visitor's perception. They are actively rewriting the narrative one tour at a time.
The narrative shift is profound and necessary. Guided tours are essential for seeing the new side of the forest, the geological and ecological reality. Visitors frequently report a transformation in how they view the area.
They leave with the impression that it is not a place of dread,
But a beautiful forest overflowing with vitality, seeing the resilience of the Niyagiri roots instead of imagining the spinning compass.
So the Jukai remains a place of genuine, non-supernatural mystery and exploration separate from the tragedy, a place where real discoveries might still await.
Absolutely. The sources suggest the forest holds many undiscovered secrets because of its unique geology. This includes the potential for unmapped lava tube caves, with hobbyists actively trying to find and name them, and real historical ruins.
Like the true purpose of those 2-kilometer-long stone walls.
Or even the rumored buried treasure connected to the Takeda clan during the Warring States period. It is a vibrant, living landscape of natural and historical intrigue, not merely a backdrop for fictional despair.
We have journeyed through Aokigahara, separating the hard facts of the 864 Jukai eruption from the soft fantasy of the spinning compass, and identifying the profoundly tragic administrative reality of the so-called Jukai Village. It's a powerful lesson in how literature, media, and sensationalism can create a powerful, self-fulfilling mythic overlay, sometimes completely obscuring the vibrant geological truths of the landscape.
The Jukai is less a cursed ancient location and far more a testament to the persistent, fierce power of nature to regenerate, anchor, and thrive, even in the harshest landscape imaginable.
And what's fascinating here is that while the forest's global stigma stems from pure fiction and historical misinterpretation,
The tragic recovery of Nemba mistaken for dark secrecy.
right, the modern, continuous human response has been overwhelmingly one of dedication and compassion.
The fact that local communities fund the Voice Calling Project, dedicating personnel every single day, 365 days a year, to
Right.
physically patrol, watch over, and protect absolute strangers traveling from distant regions is truly remarkable.
It is an intentional, funded effort of life preservation and human connection, standing strong against a global symbol of despair.
Indeed. And you are left to consider the moral weight of how quickly we, as a global society, can turn a place of such natural vitality and fierce life force, a natural monument of staggering ecological complexity, into a universal symbol of tragedy and darkness.
Right.
Conversely, you should also recognize that the greatest, most powerful force operating in the Jukai today isn't the ancient lava, the magnetic pole, or the ghost stories. It is that continuous, intentional effort of human connection, attempting day after day to ensure that life persists. The reality of the Jukai asks us to move beyond easy fears and sensationalized media and re-engage with its actual, breathing, living reality.
Perhaps the most proactive thing a curious person can do is visit Koyodai, see the geographical truth for yourself, and help shift the global narrative toward life.